Welcome to Sponsored Post Podcast, behind the lens of how influential content is made. I am Justin Moore. I am the founder and CEO of Trending Family, which is an influencer marketing agency that launches campaigns with family-friendly influencers. Today, I am so excited to be joined by Phil Albritton, founder and creator of Power Kid Design and Development. Power Kid helps its customers like Disney, Warner Brothers, and Nickelodeon invent, develop, and market products for mass and specialty retail. He's also the host of the Power Kid podcast, which is the premier and longest running podcast dedicated to the modern children's entertainment industry. Welcome, Phil.
Hey, Justin. Thanks for having me on the show. So much appreciate it.
Absolutely. Great to have you here. So why don't we kick it off? If you could share a little bit about your background and what got you into the toy industry.
Wonderful. You start like I start, and I like that a lot. Go back in time. What got you into the toy industry? You know, everybody goes back to their childhood when they're talking about toys, and I'll be no exception. Toys were just a huge part of my life growing up. My dad was a minister. My mom was a second grade teacher. And so children's ministry, the education, the classroom, those things were all just a part of my upbringing. And a big part of that is play and childhood development and toys and games and all that comes along with it. So we're a family of toy people, of players and gamers, and we just enjoyed that so much. So when I went to university, I focused on media and marketing. I have a media and marketing degree from Freed-Hardeman University, which is a private university in West Tennessee. I focused on the toy industry there. Whenever I was called upon to write a marketing paper, I was writing about how Todd McFarlane was upsetting the toy landscape, the action figure landscape, with his super detailed action figures. Whenever I was called upon to do a video production project, I was going to Target and buying handfuls of Batman action figures and making a Batman television promo with the set and lighting and the action figures and the whole thing. In graphic design classes, my focus was toy packaging and toy design. And so I really built the curriculum around what I enjoyed, and I picked projects based on what I enjoyed. Right out of university, I got a job with a company in Brentwood, Tennessee called Kid Power. Kid Power had just started manufacturing the Fanoodle, the foam pool stick that took the summer category by storm. It was a number one summer toy many years in a row in the late 90s and early 2000s. And it was a small company, wore a lot of hats, learned sales, and we did plush, we did licensing, we did marketing. I was in sales meetings, helping develop these products at every level, and just was a sponge, just absorbed as much as I could. I started Power Kid in 2003 and haven't looked back. I've been helping customers all over the world at every level develop great products, invent great products, prototype, market, brand products, and have been doing that ever since. And again, never look back. It's something I enjoy every day, getting up and being able to do. What a blessing it is.
That's super fascinating. And so, as you've gained all of this experience over many years designing toys, how do you do market research to decide which toys to make, or how do you advise the clients that you work with? I'm sure it's shifted a lot over the last, let's say, 10, 15 years, especially with the proliferation of social media.
Absolutely. You have to have a voracious appetite for data and conversation. And I think those 2 points, I'm just going to dive into a little deeper. The data, we have to get information in to understand what kids are looking at, what parents are looking at for their kids, and understand what's happening in the market, and then conversation, having those one-on-one conversations. And it's something that I do on the podcast to really uncover maybe some of those secrets, some of those things we didn't know before. Who are these people? Why are they buying what they're buying? Why are they making the decisions that they're making as far as what they buy their children, or what their children are gravitating towards? So things like formal play testing, we do a lot of, where you sit down with a product and it's kind of this formal setting where we all know why we're there. We're talking about this toy. We're focused on it. You're telling me why you like it, why you don't, and we're recording all of that data. One thing that I love to do, and it may be a little strange to those that I approach in the aisle, but just have a friendly aisle conversation. So if there's a mom or a grandma in the aisle, and maybe she looks like she's confused or she's looking for something in particular, I'll always offer to help. And I'll always offer to have that conversation and get that data, get that information. Why are you looking for that? Oh, this is a birthday party. Interesting. So she'd like something in the LOL range. Well, I know exactly where that is. Let me help you. And having those conversations is invaluable. That personal touch, that personal information. And of course, there's trend research. So there's no small amount of data that you can gain from trade shows, from industry publications, and then watching the nostalgia cycles, right? 20 to 25 years, 30 years, things resurface, things happen again. We're going through a huge 80s craze right now, which I love. And we could look at that and know that that was coming. That wave was coming when adults were hitting the age when they wanted to look back and they wanted to purchase things from their childhood. That is a consistent in the toy industry. And then finally, and to your point, social media and technology and apps have given us a really, really interesting and in-depth window into what kids want, what they are viewing, and what they will remain viewing for an extended period of time. So all of those things help us to make sure that our product and our content meets kids where they are, whether it's coming from the parent or it's generated from a YouTube channel, from a number of clicks or the amount of viewing time on that particular channel. All of that data can be aggregated into some great marketing.
So what are the kind of specific ways in which toy purchasing decisions have changed because of social media? Obviously, you go on YouTube. I have, 2 kids who are 5 and 2, and especially the 5-year-old. He definitely loves like going down that YouTube rabbit hole on YouTube Kids or whatever and watching kids reviewing various toys and things like that. So how has that impacted kind of the both purchasing decisions as well as the toy supply chain, I would imagine, right? You've got product development, you've got the market research that you're talking about, the marketing. How has that impacted all of that?
Yeah. So let's talk specifically about YouTube, because I think YouTube has a very interesting tool for doing this that maybe doesn't get talked about a whole lot. They have what's called a recommendation engine. It's kind of an AI background that's happening on YouTube all the time, and it's tracking every move. Like I said, there's data that exists if a child watches something for 15 seconds and then clicks off of it and moves to the next thing. That's a piece of data that we can gather, that we can know. And so all of those pieces of information based on that algorithm has really opened up a unique window into the child's mindset and telling us what they want. Now, we're going to talk about this later in the show. A lot of this is changing with the FTC regulations that are coming in and are now in place. And everybody's trying to find their footing in this new world of YouTube. But up to this point, that YouTube algorithm has really driven toy marketing and has given us some really interesting data. What do kids want? Daddy Finger, Baby Shark, Peppa Pig, unboxing surprises. And we'll talk more about that. I like the surprise trend. And I think there's some really compelling reasons why that has been such a long running trend in the industry. Karina Garcia slime. They love this. LOL sold $4 billion in 2018. Hundreds of thousands of videos about LOL. Millions and millions and millions of views on LOL. And so they have capitalized like no other. And it's really interesting to me too. Kids don't mind amateur quality. Amateur quality is okay, right? This whole unboxing thing, it started with adults unboxing technology products in the early 2000s. But for children, how it began was really, hands with nice fingernails and somebody talking in the background, unboxing these things. So amateur quality is okay for kids. They don't mind that. They do like to channel surf, which is a little bit reminiscent of what Sesame Street did many years ago when they would include small segments built into a larger piece of content. So it's nothing new. It's just a different platform.
Mm-hmm. How have toy manufacturers had to adapt? Has this changed like the life cycle of how quickly they need to put out toys given trends that are happening on social media or something like that? I would imagine that has a kind of a ripple effect across the whole supply chain. But have they had to kind of change their strategies in terms of how they look at their overall product development strategy?
It moves us much quicker, and it moves the retailers much quicker. We have to capitalize on these trends that are popping up and then going away on YouTube. So if you want to capitalize on those trends, we do have to move much faster. Yeah, I'd like to focus on unboxing because I think in a lot of ways, it continues to be a huge trend. But in a lot of ways, that has shifted what we do as far as toy development and marketing. It's really interesting. So kids ages 4 to 5 are not really great at anticipating the future or having a cognition of what that means to have something happen in the future. So, and then even then, they do not like to be scared. So something like a surprise that they know is going to happen, that is always pleasant and always a positive experience, is a really compelling thing for a child to watch. And that's been a really interesting trend to watch and to understand kind of the background psyche of that. And it's affected packaging. It's affected some of the packaging that we've done. So like an onion, what are the levels to open? How many levels can you build into this so that it can be an experience that is pleasing to watch on YouTube? Does it crackle? Does it pop open? Does it spring out? Does it ooze or burst? What does it look like on the small screen video? And does it tell a compelling story? Can an amateur take that product and create a compelling story so that that video goes viral? And then I'd say, beyond unboxing, you just want to make sure your toy or game looks great on the small screen. It's that idea of, can you put this in the hand of someone who is seeing it for the first time, put them on camera, and can they make it go viral?
Right.
Right? Does it look silly? Does it look fun? Can they make it look compelling? I'll shout out Chow Crown from Bang Zoom Design is an excellent example of this. Chow Crown is essentially, it's just the hat you wear. It dangles food in front of your face from these little forks. And it's essentially midair bobbing for apples.
Right.
Right? That is, you take that out of the box and anybody is immediately having fun and having this very visual experience that promotes itself, especially in a video. This is not a whole lot different, frankly, than the questions we were asking decades ago when we would say things like, is this a good TV toy? Right? In the 60s and the 70s, Marvin Glass, pioneer toy inventor, Marvin Glass, he was an expert at making his products look great on TV. Mr. Machine, The Great Garloo, Rock'em Sock'em Robots. We're just taking that technology and we're ramping it into the future. Can we make it look good on the small screen? And, another way I approach this too is to think about old commercials from the past, 70s and 80s toy commercials. I go back to my childhood. Look at a commercial from Kenner Superpowers line or Kenner Star Wars line where the children have dug a hole that is the Sarlacc pit and they're playing over that hole in their backyard, right? Or Superpowers had these elaborate city sets where the characters are playing and it's kind of this outdoor setting and kind of comic book lighting and making that product really shine on the screen. And the question today is, how do we develop and design something that is easy to put in the hands of customers and it's easy for them to make that product shine? And that's your best chance of something going viral and really doing, some decent hits.
Mm-hmm. And so you talked about, how these products, they would previously have been developed as like, how well is this going to look on TV? And so what do you think is the most influential way kids and their parents these days are consuming content related to toys, whether it's TV or whether it's YouTube and social media? I mean, you look at how many cord cutters there are, especially amongst millennials who, their kids are watching Netflix and there's no commercials essentially. Right. And so,
right.
There's still with the major networks like Nickelodeon and Disney Junior and stuff like that, there's still, there is still linear TV out there, but it's just the dynamic is so much different now in terms like my own kids, like we go to a hotel room and their cartoon is interrupted and they're like, what's going on here? Like, why did you like turn off the show? Like, they
right.
like sincerely
right.
don't understand what a commercial is, right? They understand what an ad is on YouTube, so they get that, right? That they have to skip it, right? But
why can't I skip
right.
this? What's
exactly?
going on?
And so, like, how has that affected toy development and marketing?
That's a great question. I'd say in younger ages, I think it varies by parental sensibilities. How are you going to expose your kids to these products? What's the level of exposure that you're comfortable with? I'm of the camp that a lot of that falls into the parents' hands. And I'll be honest, we're not a YouTube family. We don't spend a whole lot of time on YouTube. And I asked my kids this question, Justin. I wanted to get their take on it because I thought this was really interesting and it would be compelling to get their answer. And number one, my daughter is 7 and my son is 5. Number one answer was in the store for us. That's how they get exposed to new products and new content is in the store. So I would be, again, of the camp, packaging's not dead. This is happening a lot. A lot of toys under $30, which is a vast majority of toy products, are still impulse purchases and happen in the aisle. Okay. That's where a lot of the exposure. So packaging is still very, very important. So for them, and frankly, we do a lot of aisle walking as a family. I'm there all the time, looking and researching and discovering. And so, we spend a lot of time in the aisle. So number one for them was in the store. Number two was television. So seeing something, so they're watching a television show, and that TV ad comes on. So I would say, TV still very much alive. YouTube is just a new component to this whole marketing scheme. And then number three, and this cracked me up. I asked my son, he said, "Dad, you showed me Godzilla." So my son is all about Godzilla right now, right? He's got the figures and he's earning points because of good behavior to go buy those figures. We've got a whole system in place. And he says, "You showed me Godzilla." And I did. I showed him the 1950s, the old school, man in a costume, Godzilla. And he was just hooked. Wow, this is amazing. From there, I said, "Well, hey, buddy, why don't you get dressed up and we'll make some little cardboard buildings and I'll film you and I'll go low with the iPhone camera and I'll film you and you can be Godzilla." He's like, "Oh, yeah." So, right, we're making little films and it's just kind of a part of the play. But I introduced him to that. And so I was a component in this marketing. The brands that I loved, that I grew up, that I want to expose my kids to, that I want to see them enjoy as much as I did, right? I'm exposing them. There are going to be other families that are absolutely more attuned to YouTube, and that's going to be higher in that list. YouTube's going to be higher in that list for them. Children 8 to 12, 56% of these kids own their own phones. And so mobile and social becomes a huge factor for them. A lot of it still happens in the aisle, but when you get into those older ages, they're able to make their own decisions. They have their own money. They have a little bit more pester power with their parents. And so that's when the social media and the YouTube influencing really, really takes hold and really can become a hit.
Interesting. And so I just want to circle back to something you mentioned about the packaging and the power of packaging in the aisle and how much influence that can have. Obviously we have one of the largest kid influencers, Ryan Toys Review, has a very successful line of toys at Walmart and Target. And so do you think that we'll see more of those types of partnerships where you have kind of a prominent kid influencer's face either on the packaging of the toy itself or in some sort of end cap, or, they're using the kids' kind of name and likeness to attract interest in the aisle? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think it will continue to happen. Look, as long as retailers see sales, then yes. And as long as there's a compelling reason to build product around a brand, then yes. Ryan, absolutely. Ryan's blown up. He's the flagship of all of this. His Nickelodeon show, great numbers, just renewed for a second season. So yeah, as long as we see that success happening, absolutely. Now, again, enter the conversation about the new FTC regulations. That's going to change the landscape. YouTube creators that are targeting their videos to ages 13 and under can no longer receive payment for ads that they promote on their channels. That's going to demagnetize some of those to go away and to stop creating content or find new platforms. And that's already happening. But yeah, we will always find a way to build great brands around people and talent and creative that tells a compelling story. And Ryan from day one has told a compelling story, and it's put him on the top.
So in addition to kind of the FTC and the COPPA, rulings against YouTube, there's been some other advertising transparency organizations that recently filed a complaint against Ryan Toys Review saying that, he's actually marketing to kids, and it's not, because oftentimes has either his own products that he's talking about or other toys, and they believe that it kind of crosses a line. It's challenging, right? Because a lot of these social media platforms, YouTube included, it's very clear in the terms of service that, you can't be younger than 13 watching it. And yet, YouTube clearly understands that behavior was happening. So they launched the YouTube Kids app. And yet, there's still kind of this gray area here in terms of kids who are minors who are talking about products. And so how do toy manufacturers, how do your clients think about that? Maybe not liability, but think about that dynamic that's happening online.
Oh, we have to be cognizant of it for sure. There is a difference between something that is child targeted and something that is family friendly. And so I think we have to make that distinction. And a lot of those decisions are going to fall on one of two sides of that line. Is it family friendly content? And so we can do advertising, or is it child targeted where we are gathering too much information and we exerting too much influence over a child that doesn't know what's happening? And that's definitely a concern. Many creators are already starting to go into platforms like Roku or Hulu, Amazon Prime, creating original content for Apple TV. Those are COPPA compliant. And when they create that original content, they can put it on there and avoid any of these questions. And we will find a new way, right? We will find a new way to get great product into the hands of child customers that want them, right? And so it's a growing discussion, an ongoing discussion, but those are definitely some of the things that we have to think about.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that we talk about a lot here is this idea of kind of co-viewing, right? Like with family-friendly content, oftentimes, especially with millennial parents, they're watching a YouTube, let's say, family vlogger with their kids, right? Because that family vlogger that they're watching has kids of the same age range or something. And so their kids are interested in the content. I'm wondering, do you think that children are not just influencing their friends or their peers necessarily, but that parents are also starting to consume content related to toys, whether it's they're in the aisle and they look up a YouTube toy review, or their favorite family vlogger that the parent is watching talks about a toy or something that's helpful for their kid or something like that. Do you see that parents are engaging just as much as kids?
I don't know that they're engaging in the YouTube content as much as kids, but I do know that, yes, it's what we call pester power. Kids have a tremendous power to exert their will, their desires on their parents, be it in the aisle, be it on YouTube, be it as they're shopping on Amazon. The parents want to give children good things, and the children want certain things, and it's pester power is what it is. So yeah, that will continue. And again, the mediums will change, the media outlets will change, but that parent-child relationship, that will be consistent.
You talked about, there was like a couple different age groups of kids that you talked about having a different dynamic in terms of buying power and pester power and all that stuff. So do you find that the older kids get, the more swayed they are by influencers on social media? Or do you think that it is equally powerful across kids' ages?
It's interesting that you asked about the level of influence at a particular age. I think for YouTube, the sweet spot is again that like kind of 5 to 10 range, where they're old enough to understand compelling story, to understand character, to understand surprise, and then to understand purchasing and owning things and then even creating content. But they're young enough to still be on YouTube and not on TikTok.
Right.
which is a tremendous draw right now. So you talk about that age spread, that age spread to some degree flows between different apps and different media outlets. So are they more or less influenced? I don't know that I know that at different ages. I think there are different methods of influencing at different ages, where an unboxing video would influence an 8-year-old. That would not maybe be compelling to a 12, 13, 14-year-old, whereas a celebrity may very well be compelling. And it's pointing them to different products at that point.
What do you make of toy maker Hasbro recently buying Entertainment One, a media company? They have titles like Peppa Pig and PJ Masks and all that stuff. So, like, what do you make of that?
Sure. And Walking Dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. They own a lot of other properties. I mean, Entertainment One's a huge company. Right. And so it's really interesting to see kind of this, I don't know if you would call it consolidation because it's, different verticals, but what do you make of that?
Yeah, it's a $4 billion purchase. I mean, it's a huge deal. It's smart. It makes Hasbro a Hollywood player. They were already leaning into the entertainment space, probably more than anybody in the toy industry. Transformers, G.I. Joe. They were already looking there, already had a foothold in some of that. It brings them closer to a Disney business model. It gives them more brands to leverage. You mentioned Peppa Pig, PJ Masks. Ricky Zoom is another one that comes along with the deal. But again, Walking Dead. And Hasbro is excellent at leveraging brands and expanding brands and building products around brands. So I think it's very smart for them. It widens their adult market appeal. which is really interesting. We mentioned Walking Dead. Walking Dead is already in the toy aisle, which was a little surprising for some of us. I mean, with McFarlane has a line. Busby has the Walking Dead license on some of their blasters. So it widens what they can do in the adult market. What I think it really does, it gives them a direct avenue to original content. It's going to make managing that content easier because now it's all kind of going to be in-house and streamlined. And then one thing I'm actually really excited about that I think will hopefully come out of this is something that they've been talking about for a while, and that's kind of the Hasbro universe, which would include G.I. Joe, Vintage Line Mask, Micronauts, Visionaries, their Vintage Line, and the character Rom, to kind of build a Marvel universe similar to Marvel Universe, but to build that for Hasbro. And now they have the capability of doing that. No, I think it was a great decision.
So how can toy companies kind of get ahead of the content and influence it? I mean, what do you think is the best strategy there?
That's great. And it's a changing answer, and it will change week to week as we uncover more about the FTC rulings and understand more about that. But there are some, to me, I believe there are some staples. Storytelling. Create a variety of content that pushes your brand and helps customers engage with your products. Okay, Hatchimals, Spin Master Hatchimals. They actually do a really great job at this. Their channel has unboxing videos, commercials. They do live Q&As with the designers of Hatchimals. All of those things, all that variety of content points back to and expands their brand. The second thing I would mention is we have the capability, large brands as well as individuals have the capability like we've never had in the history of the world to build our own audience, build that audience, cultivate that audience, talk to that audience, understand what that audience wants from you. And the payoff can be long lasting. Find your voice, find your fans and tell that story, and then empower your customers, your listeners, your shoppers to be a brand advocate for you. And Lego has done an excellent job of this. 5 million subscribers, over 3 billion views on their channel. It's one of the most popular YouTube channels. It's because they have taken the time to build an excellent fan base that loves to talk about their products and tell stories within the context of their products. It's giving your audience the power to tell that story. I think overall what we're seeing is the understanding that compelling content and great story can grow a brand, can anchor a brand in the minds of its consumers like no other. And if you can keep recreating great story and reimagining your characters in that story, then there's real value long-term in that decision. I think it revolves around the content. The bird's eye view of that is the content. And I think social media is absolutely a part of that.
So kind of to wrap it up here, what do you think is next for the toy industry? Obviously, there's these trends that rise very quickly and fall just as quickly in social media. And so chasing that, or like what do you think is next for their strategy and their product development?
I think we have to go back to the consistence. I think we have to go back to the staples. Compelling story in the hands of the right audience. Know your audience. Use the data. Yeah, this FTC thing, we're all questioning what's next. How do we do this? How do we push into the future? And again, I think a lot of that's going to go into those the Rokus, the Hulus, the Amazon Primes, the COPA compliant, right? Let's just take that off the table. Let's get compliant. Let's figure out how to work inside of those outlets. So I'd say that you're going to see a shift into that. Ultimately, it comes down to communicating your brand on a personal level to your customer. And we're going to find new ways to do that. If I was to peer into a crystal ball, I would see virtual reality potentially being a huge part of that. We're not there with the technology's not there yet, but it's coming, right? Knowing your customer, giving your customer what they want. The customer is driving the marketing now. The customer is driving the brand. And that's a shift. That's a huge shift. Used to be the brand could tell the customer what they want,
right,
and advertise to them.
Kind of the Steve Jobs approach.
Yeah, right. But communication is wide open now. And we have to pay attention to our customers. And it's the companies that will hear their customers loud and clear and really listen that are going to excel in the next decades.
Absolutely fascinating. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Phil. So how can people find you, get in touch with you, and how can they listen to the Power Kid podcast?
Absolutely. Justin, thank you so much for having me on. Anybody can feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm there. I'm active all the time. The Power Kid podcast, do a Google search for it. We're on iTunes and Stitcher and many more. Over 100 episodes with toy industry experts and toy industry friends there. So join us there. Join the conversation. It's a blast. Feel free to email me, phil@powerkiddesign.com. If I can help you in any way, be happy to do that. So Justin, thank you so much for having me on. And this has been a fun conversation.
Absolutely. Fantastic. You've just listened to the Sponsored Post podcast with your host, Justin Moore. You can subscribe to hear more great interviews and episodes via Apple and Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Trending Family, you can visit www.trendingfamily.com. See you next time.